I wake up to the taste of metal in my mouth and a cold so sharp it feels like it's slicing straight through my bones. For a moment, I don't know where I am. Then the darkness settles around me, heavy and damp, and the smell of mildew confirms what my mind is trying not to accept. I'm in my own basement, my own house, on the concrete floor like I'm nothing more than trash tossed aside. I try to sit up, but my head throbs. My hand brushes across something gritty, maybe old dust or bits of broken plaster, and the realization hits me fully. My daughter put me here. My Emma. My only girl. The child I nursed through fevers and heartbreaks and disappointments. The one I believed would always love me, even when she drifted further and further away. Her voice rings in my ears, sharp and furious. You'll rot here. I can still see the wildness in her eyes, hear the sound of my phone shattering against the floor above me. She smashed it so I couldn't call for help. She locked the basement door and walked away. No, she didn't just walk. She stomped out, muttering things I couldn't fully understand, slamming every door on her way to freedom and luxury. A cruise. A week of sun, champagne, and no mother to burden her. My throat tightens as the memory claws its way back. I remember her hand trembling on the doorknob before she locked it, the final click echoing like a sentence. I remember calling her name. Emma. Sweetheart, please stop. What are you doing? She didn't answer. Not with words. The silence she left behind told me everything. I pull my knees closer to my chest, trying to warm myself. The air feels wet and alive, like it's crawling across my skin. For a second, panic grabs me by the throat. Have you ever felt that kind of fear? The kind that makes your heart beat louder than your thoughts? I inhale deeply because I have to. Stay calm, I whisper to myself. My voice sounds small in the dark, weaker than I want to admit. She thought she'd planned everything. She thought she'd gotten rid of me. But Emma, my clever, greedy girl, never paid attention to the things she didn't care about. And she definitely didn't care about tools or dusty old boxes or the storage shelves she always complained about. My hand brushes against a wooden crate, and the corner of something hard presses against my palm. I push the crate aside just enough to see a faint glow, impossible but real. A phone. Not my phone. A forgotten older one I must have tossed down here when I upgraded years ago. Maybe I'd meant to donate it. Maybe I'd meant to throw it out. I can't remember. But right now it feels like a lifeline. My fingers shake as I reach for it. When the screen lights up, even dimly, I feel tears sting my eyes. Please, I breathe. Please work. The battery icon is almost empty. But it's there. I don't waste time. I type the shortest message I can, praying the phone will send it before dying, praying the spotty basement signal somehow reaches the outside world. My thumb hovers, then presses send. And it goes. One message. One tiny mistake my daughter didn't account for. One chance. I lean back against the wall, exhausted, and close my eyes. I don't know if she'll see it. I don't know if she'll care. But when morning creeps in through the cracks above me and I hear footsteps, fast, frantic, pounding across my kitchen floor, I know she got it. I hear her voice. Not angry this time. Not triumphant. But terrified. Trembling. Mom? Mom. Her panic seeps through the floorboards and settles in my chest like a strange kind of justice. Have you ever watched the person who tried to destroy you suddenly realize you're not gone? That you're still here? That their plan didn't work? It's a feeling I'll never forget. But to understand why any of this happened, why my own daughter locked me away to die, I need to take you back to the moment this nightmare began. I suppose I should start by telling you what my life looked like before everything collapsed, before I found myself lying on that basement floor in the dark, wondering how my own daughter could have turned into someone I barely recognized. Because none of this happened overnight. It never does. Betrayal grows slowly, like mold in a house you think is clean, quietly spreading until one day you wake up choking on it. My name is Eleanor Brooks, and at the time all this happened, I was 72 years old. I had been widowed for almost 4 years. My husband, Richard, passed in his sleep, a quiet ending to a loud, stubborn life. We'd been married for 48 years, almost half a century, and when he died, it felt like someone had cut the anchor line of my entire existence. I drifted. Some days I felt too light, other days too heavy. People tell you grief fades, and maybe that's true, but it never disappears. It just changes shape. For a long time I kept myself busy. I read books, I tended to my garden, I attended church on Sundays, and I spoke to a few friends who were still around. But the house always felt too big, too quiet, like the walls were listening for a voice that wasn't coming back. It didn't help that my son, Henry, lived in Seattle with his wife and children. He called every week, but calls are just slices of life, not the real thing. Emma, though, well, Emma was supposed to be my person. My girl. She lived only 30 minutes away. Growing up, she'd been the sensitive one, the dramatic one, the child who clung to my skirt on the first day of kindergarten. She had a laugh that filled an entire room and a stubborn streak that could move mountains. I loved her fiercely. I still do, though it hurts to admit that. After Richard died, she began coming around more often. At first, it felt like comfort, like family stepping in to cushion the blow. She would bring me groceries, tidy things up, sit with me while I drank tea. I thought she missed him too. I thought she was grieving with me. But now, looking back, I realize she was observing, calculating, testing the edges of what she could control. The first strange sign came on a rainy Thursday afternoon, maybe 8 months after the funeral. Emma showed up unannounced, soaked to the bone, hair plastered to her cheeks. She didn't even say hello. "Mom," she said, practically barging past me. "Do you have your checkbook?" I remember blinking at her, confused. My checkbook? Why? She gave this little laugh, the kind that wasn't a laugh at all. "Just bring it, okay? You're making things difficult." Making things difficult. That phrase stuck with me. When I handed it to her, she flipped through the pages with a frown. "You forgot to pay your trash bill." I looked at her carefully. "I paid it online." She froze for a moment. Just a second. But it was enough for me to see something dark flicker across her face. Then the smile came back. Too quick, too shiny, like a cheap ornament. "Oh, well, good. I just wanted to make sure." I shrugged it off at the time. You do that when you love someone. You excuse the little things. But the little things kept happening. 3 weeks later, I found her in my office rummaging through drawers. She didn't hear me approach. "Emma," I said gently. She jumped like she'd touched a hot stove. "Mom, God, you scared me. I was just, looking for stamps." "Stamps aren't in that drawer." Her eyes narrowed for just a moment. "Maybe you moved them and forgot." That was the first time she insinuated that my memory was slipping. It wouldn't be the last. Another time she brought her boyfriend, Mark, a man I never warmed to. And the two of them walked through my house like real estate agents. They whispered in corners, opened and closed doors, peered out windows. Finally I asked, "What exactly are you looking for?" Emma flashed that too bright smile again. "Oh, Mom, don't be so suspicious. We're just planning." "Planning what?" Mark stepped forward with that slick smile he always had, the kind that showed too many teeth. "Her future, of course." I felt the first true ripple of unease then. The kind that curls up from the stomach to the throat. The kind your body recognizes long before your brain does. It only got worse. Little by little, I began noticing changes. My bank statements came later. Papers on my desk were shuffled around. Mail disappeared before I saw it. Emma began insisting she should help with things, bills, appointments, taxes, things I'd handled my entire adult life without her. Whenever I pushed back, she'd sigh dramatically and say things like, "Mom, you're stressing yourself out," or, "Why don't you let me take care of this? You don't need to worry about these complicated things." Complicated things. Trash bills and subscription renewals. I may be 72, but I wasn't slipping the way she implied. I knew that. But every time she spoke to me in that soft, patronizing voice, I felt a little piece of myself shrink. I started noticing her watching me too much, studying me, asking strange questions like, "Have you been sleeping okay? You seemed confused the other day." Even when I hadn't been confused at all. Once she told my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, that I'd been struggling with clarity. I wasn't. Not even a little. It was like she was slowly writing a story about me. A story where I was helpless, dependent, forgetful. A story where she was the hero stepping in to save me. But why? One afternoon, curiosity, or maybe fear, got the better of me. I waited until Emma left and then tiptoed into the living room. The coffee table had been moved a few inches. Not much, but I noticed things. I always have. Underneath one of the magazines, I found a real estate brochure. My house, my home. circled in red ink like it was on sale. My heart thudded hard against my ribs. I felt heat rising in my face. Couldn't be what I thought. My own daughter planning to sell the house? Without asking me? Without telling me? I told myself there had to be another explanation. There always is when you want to believe the best in someone. When you think love guarantees loyalty. But that night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling fan turning slowly above me, I felt something cold press against my spine. A warning. Over the next few weeks, more things happened. Subtle things. A missing key. A locked drawer that used to be unlocked. A conversation I overheard between Emma and Mark in my kitchen, their voices low and sharp. She won't be a problem much longer. You're sure? Positive. I remember standing in the hallway, heart pounding, telling myself I must have misunderstood, that they couldn't possibly be talking about me. But deep down I knew. Everything in me screamed that something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I wish I could say I confronted her right then. I wish I could say I was brave or bold or wise. But I wasn't. I was scared. I was confused. And I loved her. That's the part people don't understand. Love makes fools of us all. So I stayed quiet. I watched. I listened. I took mental notes. I tried to act normal. But inside something shifted. A small sharp piece of me woke up. One moment in particular sealed it. Emma came over one afternoon with a stack of papers. "Mom," she said kindly as a wolf talks to a lamb, "I need you to sign these." "What are they?" "Oh, just insurance forms and some updates for the bank. You don't need to read them." "Don't need to read them?" I took the stack. My hands were steady but my heart wasn't. I skimmed the first page. Then the second. Her name was on everything. Not mine. And that was the moment right there when I knew. When all the little red flags stopped being flags and became a forest fire. When denial cracked open and made room for clarity. Something was terribly, dangerously wrong. And I was going to find out exactly what. I didn't sleep the night after Emma brought me those papers. I lay there in the dark, staring at the faint reflection of the street lamp on my ceiling, listening to the old house breathe. Every creak, every shift of the floorboards, every distant sound felt like a warning. My mind wouldn't stop repeating her words, the too sweet tone she used when she said I didn't need to read them. It was as though she believed I'd already surrendered without even realizing it. But I hadn't. Not yet. By the time the sun rose the next morning, I had made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. I needed to know the truth before I said a single word. And I needed to figure out what she was really planning. Have you ever reached that point where instinct overrides fear? Where your heart tells you something your mind isn't ready to accept? That morning, as I sipped my lukewarm tea and stared at the stack of unsigned documents she'd left behind, I felt something shift inside me. A kind of quiet resolve. I may have been 72, but I wasn't helpless. I wasn't confused. And I wasn't about to let my daughter or anyone turn me into a victim. The first thing I did was go through the house. Slowly, methodically, room by room. Not because I thought I'd find some dramatic treasure map or confession letter hidden under a floorboard, but because I needed to see if she or Mark had moved anything else, violated any more boundaries, taken anything. I started in my office. I opened every drawer, every file, and studied each stack of papers. I'd always kept things organized, and so the slightest disruption was noticeable. And I noticed plenty. Some documents had been shifted. A few pages were slightly bent in the corners, as if someone had flipped through them quickly. My insurance file was open just a hair, though I knew I had closed it the last time I used it. My property tax statements were out of order. A small key that usually sat in a ceramic dish on my shelf was missing entirely. I felt my pulse quicken. I checked my bedroom next. My jewelry box, the one Richard gave me on our 25th anniversary, was off-center on the dresser. Only by an inch, but I saw it immediately. Inside, things were mostly intact, rings, earrings, bracelets, though one necklace seemed slightly tangled, as if someone had picked it up and put it back in haste. In the kitchen, I found a stack of mail tucked under a placemat. Bills I hadn't opened yet, because I hadn't seen them. One envelope had been slit open at the top. Not by me. My heart squeezed painfully in my chest. Emma had been going through my mail. I held the envelope in my hands for a long time, feeling the anger rise slowly, Not hot and explosive but cold and precise. Betrayal has different temperatures. This one felt like ice water spreading through my veins. When I finally sat down, the house felt different. Like it wasn't mine anymore. Like someone had rearranged my life while I was sleeping. I couldn't stop replaying the conversation I'd overheard between Emma and Mark. She won't be a problem much longer. Those words had haunted me for weeks. I told myself I'd misheard them, or that they were talking about something else. But now they echoed inside me with a new clarity. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't paranoid. There was something happening behind my back, and I was going to find out what. My investigation began simply. Quietly. I started paying attention to everything. I wrote down small details in a notebook, things I saw, things I heard, things that didn't make sense. I made copies of important documents and hid them in different places around the house. I began locking my office door when I left the room, and I watched my daughter. The next time she came over, she behaved almost exactly as before. She walked through the house like it belonged to her. She asked pointed questions about my routines, what time I usually woke up, how often I went to the grocery store, when I planned to downsize. She tested the doorknob of my office when she thought I wasn't looking. When she found it locked, her expression darkened for only a fraction of a second before she forced her smile back into place. "Mom," she said softly, placing her hand on my arm, "you don't have to hide things from me. I'm trying to help." I studied her face, trying to find the girl I once knew. But all I saw was someone performing emotions rather than feeling them. "I know you think you're helping," I replied carefully, "but I can handle my own affairs." Her jaw tightened. "That's exactly what I'm worried about. You know that sinking feeling you get when someone you love says something that feels rehearsed, like they've been practicing it in front of a mirror?" That's how her words sounded, like they were part of a script. Later, when she went outside to take a phone call, I stood by the window and watched her pace the driveway. Her voice was low, almost a hiss, but I heard enough to understand the tone. "She's getting difficult. No, she won't sign yet. I told you I'm working on it. Stop pressuring me." "I can't just force her." "Force me." My stomach dropped. She came back inside a minute later, smiling again as if she hadn't just been arguing about me like I was some business transaction. But I didn't confront her. I wasn't ready. Not without proof. And I needed proof. Over the next week, I noticed even more alarming things. My Social Security check was delayed. A medical bill arrived that I didn't recognize. A bank statement showed a transfer I didn't authorize. Only $50, but enough to unsettle me. I called the bank and asked when the last in-person visit had been made to my account. 3 days ago, ma'am," the teller said. "Around noon. I was at home that day. I hadn't gone anywhere." When I asked who had made the withdrawal, the teller hesitated. It was someone with power of attorney. My hand gripped the phone so tightly I felt my nails dig into my palm. "Excuse me? I don't have power of attorney assigned to anyone." There was a long pause. "Ma'am, we have documentation that your daughter does." For a moment I couldn't breathe. It was as though time stopped, and the room spun slowly around me. My daughter had forged my signature. She had given herself control of my finances. "Can you send me copies of those documents?" I asked, barely managing to keep my voice steady. "Of course. I'll mail them today." I didn't wait for the mail. As soon as we ended the call, I put on my coat and drove straight to the bank. The teller recognized me and brought out the file. When I saw my signature on those papers, my knees almost buckled. It was close. Close enough that someone who didn't know me well might not question it. But it wasn't mine. Emma had done this behind my back. Done it weeks ago. She had been planning things much earlier than I realized. When I got back home, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the documents, feeling a mixture of disgust, anger, and profound sorrow. My hands trembled. My lips quivered. I felt like everything I knew had cracked in half. The worst part wasn't the forgery. It wasn't even the theft. It was the realization that my daughter, the child I raised, the woman I trusted, had looked me in the eye so many times while plotting to strip me of everything. That kind of betrayal burns deep. But that wasn't the last discovery I made that week. Not even close. One afternoon, after Emma left in a rush, claiming she had a work emergency, but forgetting her purse on the counter, I heard her phone vibrating inside. I shouldn't have opened it. I know that. But I also know she shouldn't have betrayed me. And at that point, my survival instincts were stronger than my morals. The screen lit up with a preview of a message from Mark. Did she sign yet? We don't have time to wait. My throat tightened. I opened the message, then the thread. And what I saw made the room tilt sideways. They had been planning everything. The house, my savings, my insurance, my retirement funds. They talked about me like I was already gone. Mark, she's old. She'll slip soon. Emma, I'm working on that. She's confused more often now. Mark, make sure the lawyer believes it. Bring up her memory issues. It'll speed things up. Memory issues. The same phrase she'd used with Mrs. Henderson. The same thing she'd been repeating to me subtly like she was planting seeds. I scrolled further. Emma, once she signs the house over, we can list it immediately. List it. Sell it. My home. Without me. At the bottom of the conversation I found something even worse. A PDF attachment. I opened it. It was a property evaluation report. My house, my home, valued as though it were already on the market. Estimated sale timeline. Suggested listing price. Renovation recommendations. The report date? 6 weeks earlier. 6 weeks. They had been planning to sell my house while I still lived in it. My hand shook so hard I nearly dropped the phone. I felt something inside me crack. Not a clean break, but a long deep fracture that split straight through my heart. My daughter wasn't just manipulating me. She was preparing to erase me. That night I barely slept. My mind raced with questions, memories, and a fear so heavy it felt like someone was sitting on my chest. Every shadow in the room felt threatening. Every sound made my heart jump. How long had she been planning this? When had her love ended? What had I missed? How had I failed her as a mother? What made me so disposable? I kept hearing her voice whisper in my mind. She won't be a problem much longer. By morning I knew I couldn't rely on my instincts alone. I needed evidence. Hard evidence. Something no one could refute. Something that would protect me if things escalated. So I began documenting everything. I took pictures of altered documents, photographed the forged signatures, saved copies of text messages and emails, recorded conversations on my phone when I could. I even wrote down dates and times of suspicious behavior. I didn't know exactly what I was building, but I knew it was a shield. And I would need one. Because Emma and Mark grew bolder with each passing day. One of the most unsettling incidents happened on a Tuesday afternoon. I had gone into town to pick up some groceries, and when I returned home, I found Emma sitting at my kitchen table, sipping tea like she lived there. I hadn't given her a key. Emma, I said slowly, how did you get in? She looked up with that same too bright smile. Oh, I thought I told you. I had a copy made ages ago. My stomach twisted. She set her mug down and folded her hands. Mom, you really shouldn't be living here alone. This house is too big. Too old. Too much for you to manage. I'm managing fine. She tilted her head sympathetically. Are you? I wanted to shout. I wanted to slam my hand on the table and scream that she had no right to talk to me that way. But I didn't. Because anger would reveal what I knew. And I wasn't done gathering proof. So I simply said, Emma, if you want to talk about something, say it plainly. Her eyes narrowed. You need to sign those documents. I felt cold. Why? Because we're trying to help you, she snapped. Then she softened her tone. Mom, Mark and I just want what's best. I stared at her. Do you? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her jaw clenched. Stop being dramatic. I almost laughed. Dramatic? This from the daughter who used to cry over burnt toast. But I didn't say that. Instead, I watched her carefully. Then something happened that made every hair on the back of my neck stand up. She reached across the table and placed her hand on mine. Her touch was cold. Mom, she whispered. We need those papers signed. Don't make this harder. Don't make this harder. Harder for who? Harder than what? Before I could respond, she leaned back and smiled again. Anyway, she chirped. Let's not argue. She stood, gathered her purse, and walked toward the door. But as she passed behind me, she muttered under her breath, barely audible. You're running out of time. A chill ran through me so violently I felt dizzy. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I just sat there, frozen, listening to her footsteps fade down the hall. Running out of time. Those words replayed in my mind for hours. A few days later, I made the discovery that changed everything. I was taking out the trash when I noticed the door of Mark's car, parked in my driveway, was slightly ajar. He and Emma had run inside to grab something, though I didn't remember inviting them over. I hesitated for a moment, then curiosity or fear pushed me closer. On the passenger seat, half covered by a jacket, was a folder. My name was written on it. I shouldn't have touched it. I knew that. But I did. Inside I found a list. Not just any list. An inventory of my belongings. Every piece of jewelry listed with approximate value. My mother's china set. Richard's tools. The antique cabinet in the dining room. The Persian rug we bought 20 years ago. Even my clothing had been categorized. At the bottom of the list, handwritten in a rushed scrawl, were the words, "Sell or donate after removal." After removal. My breath caught in my throat. Removal of what? Of me? My legs trembled so hard I had to lean against the car door. My vision blurred. My heart raced in my chest like a trapped bird. This wasn't just manipulation. This wasn't just greed. This was a plan. A coordinated, deliberate, step-by-step plan to strip me of everything. My money, my home, my autonomy. Maybe even my life. I closed the folder and placed it back exactly where I found it. My hand shook so violently I could barely steady myself as I backed away. When Emma and Mark returned a few minutes later, laughing about something, I stood in the kitchen and pretended to be making tea. I kept my back turned so they wouldn't see the terror in my eyes. "Mom," Emma called. "We're heading out. Call me if you need anything." I didn't turn around. "I will." The moment the door closed behind them, I let out a long, shuddering breath. I knew then that I wasn't safe. Not from them, and not in my own home. But I also knew something else. I wasn't going to let them win. Not quietly. Not easily. Not ever. I began forming a plan. A way to expose everything. A way to protect myself. A way to take back control. But before I could put any of it into motion, things escalated even further. And far faster than I expected. Because within just a few days, Emma made her move. And nothing in the world could have prepared me for what she did next. I remember the exact moment things crossed the line I could never uncross. It happened on a Thursday afternoon, the kind of afternoon that feels harmless on the surface. The sky was pale, almost colorless, and the air carried a strange quiet that made the whole neighborhood feel hollow. I was in the living room folding laundry while the TV murmured in the background, when I heard the sound of a key turning in my front door. My body went rigid. No one was supposed to be here. I hadn't invited anyone over. I hadn't forgotten any appointments. I hadn't asked for help. Yet the unmistakable click of the lock sounded through the house again, followed by the soft push of the door swinging open. I stood frozen, a hand still clutching one of Richard's old shirts, as footsteps crossed the threshold. "Mom!" Emma's voice called out casually, as though she had every right in the world to let herself in unannounced. I took a breath and steadied myself before she entered the living room. When she finally appeared, wearing a bright red coat and an expression that didn't match it, I felt my pulse thudding under my skin. Her eyes were sharp, too sharp, like she had walked in already searching for something. "There you are," she said, smiling. "You didn't answer your phone." I didn't take my eyes off her. I didn't hear it ring. "Oh," she said lightly. "Maybe it's dead." She said it too casually. Too certain. Too rehearsed. I walked to the kitchen counter as calmly as I could and checked my phone. It was turned off, not dead, just powered down. That wasn't how I left it. "Strange," I murmured. Emma shrugged and wandered toward the hallway like she owned the place. "I came to check on you. I didn't ask you to." She turned back toward me, that smile still plastered on her face. Do I need an invitation to check on my own mother? I didn't answer. Because the real answer was yes. Yes, she did. But she no longer cared about boundaries. She didn't even pretend to. She gave the house a slow, sweeping look, and the intensity in her eyes made my skin prickle. She wasn't just visiting me. She was evaluating something, measuring distances, weighing possibilities. It was the same look she had the day I caught her rummaging through my office. Everything in me tightened. Then she said the sentence that made the floor drop out from under me. "Mom, we need to talk about something important." She spoke quietly, her voice carrying a strange edge, almost a tremor. It was the tone people use when delivering bad news, or preparing someone for an announcement they don't want to hear. I kept my face calm even as my heartbeat stumbled. "What is it?" Emma reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. She placed it on the coffee table like a dealer laying down a winning hand. "It's time," she said softly. A cold ripple worked its way up my spine. "Time for what?" "For you to move into assisted living." I think the world stopped turning for a heartbeat. My vision blurred, and the edges of the room softened as though I were staring through a thick pane of glass. "Assisted living?" I repeated slowly, quietly, because if I didn't, I was afraid I would scream. Emma nodded, the smile gone now. "It's for the best." "For the best?" I echoed numbly. "According to who?" She sighed deeply. Exasperated, frustrated, rehearsed. "Mom, you know you've been having trouble lately. Forgetting things. Getting confused. Leaving the stove on." "I never left the stove on," I snapped. She didn't flinch. "You don't remember doing it." As I didn't do it. The silence that followed crackled with tension. Emma picked up the envelope again and offered it to me. "I already filled out the preliminary paperwork," she said. "All you need to do is sign the last page." I stared at the seal on the envelope. A local assisted living facility. I had never set foot in that place. I didn't even know where it was. "I'm not going anywhere," I said softly. A strange look flickered across her face. Frustration mixed with something darker. Something cold. Something dangerous. "Mom," she said, her voice icier now, "you can't stay here alone anymore. You're not capable." Capable. The word cut through me like a knife. I straightened my back. "I'm perfectly capable." Her jaw tightened. "Don't do this." "I'm not signing anything." Her eyes narrowed, not with anger but with calculation. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." There it was again. That phrase. Always that phrase. I didn't know what she had planned for that afternoon, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. It wasn't good. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Mom, if you don't sign these papers willingly, there are other avenues." "Threatening me?" I asked quietly. Her lips curved, not into a smile but into something eerie. "It's not a threat. It's the truth. I already spoke to someone at the county office. If I can demonstrate that you're mentally deteriorating, the court can appoint me guardian." My breath caught. Guardianship. Full control. Of me. My home. My money. My decisions. The walls felt like they were closing in. "You're lying," I whispered. She didn't blink. "Try me." My heart hammered so violently I felt nauseous. "I'm not signing." Emma held my gaze for a long moment, too long. Then her expression flattened into something cold and hollow. "Fine," she said. "We'll do this the hard way." She grabbed the envelope, shoved it back into her purse and walked toward the door. I followed, but she turned before leaving and looked at me with an expression I'll never forget. A look that said she had already decided my fate. A look that said she wasn't finished. A look that chilled me so deeply I felt dizzy. "Mom," she whispered. "You won't win this." Then she closed the door softly. Too softly. Softness was her tell. When she was calm like that, it meant danger. My throat tightened. She was escalating, and I didn't know how far she was willing to go. The next morning, I woke to the sound of voices outside my house. Two people murmuring just loud enough that I could hear tone but not words. I moved quietly to the front window and peeked through the blinds. Emma was standing in my driveway, with Mark, and a man in a gray suit I had never seen before. My stomach dropped. I watched them talk in hushed tones. Emma gestured toward the house several times. The man in the suit took notes. Mark kept glancing at the front door like he expected me to open it. I didn't. I stood motionless as they circled the house, pointing, whispering, assessing. After 10 minutes, they returned to the driveway, spoke again, and the man got in his car and drove off. Emma and Mark stayed a moment longer. They argued, quiet but fierce, before getting into their own car and leaving. My hands trembled on the windowsill. What was happening? I didn't have answers, but the fear in my chest told me one thing. They were accelerating their plan. And I needed to accelerate mine. I spent the rest of the day preparing. I recorded a video on my old laptop explaining everything I had discovered. I backed up my files to a flash drive and hid it beneath a loose floorboard in my closet. I gathered all my documents, the forged signatures, the suspicious financial statements, the property listing that I had collected over the past weeks. I knew Emma wasn't giving up. I knew she would come back. And I knew next time she wouldn't come alone. That night I called my son Henry. I didn't tell him everything. My relationship with him was warm but distant, and I didn't want him to panic, but I did tell him I felt unsafe. He offered to fly out immediately, but I insisted he wait 2 days, giving me time to gather everything I needed. I wish now that I hadn't waited, because Emma didn't give me 2 days. She didn't even give me 1. It happened the following afternoon. I was in the laundry room transferring clothes from the washer to the dryer when the doorbell rang. I dried my hands on a towel and walked to the door, expecting a delivery or maybe a neighbor. But when I looked through the peephole, my chest tightened painfully. Emma stood on the porch. Alone. Or so it seemed. Against every instinct screaming inside me, I opened the door just a crack. Yes. She smiled. Too wide. Too rehearsed. Too wrong. Mom, can we talk? No. Her smile didn't falter. It's important. I don't want you in my house. Her eyes glinted with something triumphant. Oh, but you invited me yesterday, remember? You told me to come by any time. I never said that. She tilted her head. Really? Are you sure? Anger and fear knotted together in my chest. I want you to leave, I said firmly. But she didn't leave. She stepped back. And that's when I saw movement at the edge of the porch. Mark. And behind him, the man in the gray suit. My heart lurched. Emma placed her hand on the door. Mom, we need to come inside. No. She pushed gently. I pushed back. Then Mark stepped forward. Let's not make a scene, he said. Get away from my house. My voice shook, not with weakness but with rage. The man in the suit spoke calmly. Mrs. Brooks? I'm from Adult Protective Services. We received reports that you may be unsafe living alone. Ice flooded my veins. Reports. Emma. She had done it. She had told them I was incapable. Confused. Unsafe. My daughter. My only daughter. Please step aside, the man said. We're required to check on you. I'm fine, I whispered. Emma leaned closer. Just let them in, Mom. And then she pushed. Harder this time. The door swung open. Mark followed. The APS worker stepped forward. I stumbled backward, gripping the edge of the hallway table to keep myself standing. Stop, I said, breath shaking. Get out. The APS worker raised his hands. We just want to talk. Emma glanced around the house, eyes sharp, scanning everything like she was taking inventory. Mark closed the door behind them. I was trapped. Fear surged through me, cold and suffocating. I knew, instantly, viscerally, what this was. An ambush. Everything had led to this moment. The forged documents. The missing mail. The whispered conversations. The property listings. The talk of forgetfulness. The push for guardianship. This wasn't concern. This wasn't care. This was a coordinated attempt to remove me. To take control. To get rid of me. And standing there in my own hallway, surrounded by people who wanted to erase me, I understood the truth with a clarity I'd never felt before. They weren't going to stop. Not until they got what they wanted. Not until I was out of my home. Not until I was somewhere they could control every detail of my life. Maybe not until I was dead. Something hardened inside me. Something quiet but fierce. Something that made me feel taller, stronger, sharper. I straightened my back. Get out, I said. Emma crossed her arms. Mom, stop acting crazy. The APS worker gave her a look. He wasn't supposed to let family influence his assessment, but she ignored it. She's been paranoid for weeks, Emma said. She's not eating properly. She's forgetting conversations. She keeps locking herself in her room. That's not true, I snapped. Emma turned her gaze to me with cold triumph in her eyes. See? She's disoriented. The APS worker frowned, uncertain, his eyes flicking between us. I knew I needed to act fast. If I panicked, if I stuttered, if I let fear break through, I would look exactly like the portrait she'd been painting. So I breathed. Slow, deep, controlled. Then I spoke clearly and firmly. I am fine. I am healthy. And I want all of you out of my house right now. I have not given permission for you to enter. And if you don't leave immediately, I will call the police. Mark stepped forward. You wouldn't dare. I looked him dead in the eye. Try me. The APS worker raised a hand. Everyone needs to calm down. No, I said. Everyone needs to leave. Emma's eyes flared with fury. She hadn't expected resistance. She hadn't expected strength. She definitely hadn't expected me to threaten police involvement. For a long moment no one moved. Then the APS worker exhaled slowly. Mrs. Brooks, I can't force you to let us stay. But we will need to follow up. Fine, I said. Emma glared. This isn't over. She turned sharply, snatched her purse, and brushed past the man in the suit. Mark followed, muttering something under his breath. The APS worker hesitated, watching me carefully, then walked out and closed the door softly behind him. I locked it instantly. Then I stood with my back pressed to the wood, chest heaving, hands shaking violently. They had come to take me. Today. And I had stopped them. But for how long? How far would they go next time? How desperate was my daughter? I slid down to the floor, trembling. I didn't know the answer then. But I know it now. Because that visit triggered the final and most dangerous wave of her plan. And it was the one that almost killed me. After the APS ambush, I didn't sleep for 2 nights. My mind replayed every detail over and over. The man in the gray suit, the way Mark hovered behind Emma like a silent threat, the cold, triumphant look in my daughter's eyes as she tried to force her way into my home. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that moment again. The pressure of the door pushing against me, her voice dripping with fake concern. The accusation in her tone when she said I was making things harder. Harder for who? She wasn't trying to protect me. She was trying to isolate me, trap me, remove me. And she almost had. For 2 days I barely left the house. I double-locked every door. I checked the windows twice. I kept my phone in my pocket at all times. I didn't shower unless every door was closed and locked. My heart raced at every car engine outside, every footstep on the sidewalk. I didn't even turn the lights on after sunset. I didn't want anyone to see me moving inside. Fear makes you smaller, compresses you. It folds you in on yourself until your body becomes a cage. But fear can also sharpen you. And by the end of the second day, when exhaustion made my thoughts feel too heavy, something inside me shifted again. A kind of clarity, a kind of final understanding. They weren't going to stop. Not because they needed help. Not because they believed I needed supervision. Not because they loved me. But because my existence was an obstacle standing between them and what they wanted. Money. Control. My home. My life. And once I understood that, the fear inside me began to crystallize into something else. Resolve. I was done being passive. Done staying quiet. Done waiting to see what they would do next. If Emma could escalate, so could I. Henry called that night. I almost didn't pick up. I didn't want to worry him, but something inside me told me to. When I heard his voice, warm and concerned, I almost broke. Mom? Everything okay? You sound tired. I'm fine, I lied. Just a little overwhelmed. He hesitated. You want me to come out there early? I can get a flight tomorrow morning. For a moment I imagined saying yes. Imagined his arms around me. The safety of another human presence in the house. But if he came now, before I had everything documented, organized, and ready, Emma would use his presence as proof I needed supervision. She would twist it. She would use it as ammunition. Not yet. Not until I was prepared. No, I said gently. Come this weekend. I'm okay. Are you sure? I hesitated, then said the words that surprised even me. Henry, do you trust Emma? Silence. Long thick silence. Then quietly. Do you want the truth? Yes. I never have. The confession hit me like a cold wave. Why? I whispered. Something about her has always felt off, like she performs everything, like she's playing a part. He hesitated. And she lies. A lot. Even when she doesn't need to. My throat tightened. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't confused. My son, my rational, level-headed son, had seen the same things I was seeing now. Mom, he said softly, if she's causing trouble, you need to tell me. I closed my eyes. Tears burned behind them. I'll explain everything when you get here, I said. He didn't push. He just said, I'll be there soon. I love you. When we hung up, I sat alone in the dark living room, the silence pressing around me like heavy fog. Henry knew. He always had. And yet, it was too late for him to help with what came next. Because the turning point was already coming. Already moving toward me. Already in motion. The final shift, the moment everything tipped, happened the next morning. It was a Friday, early enough that the sun was still pale and the dew clung to the grass outside. I had just made tea and was settling myself at the kitchen table when I heard something faint. A scrape. A whisper. A shift in air pressure. Coming from the back of the house. I froze, cup halfway to my lips. Then it came again. A soft click. Like someone testing a lock. The hairs on my arms stood straight up. I moved silently down the hallway, my heart pounding. The sound grew slightly louder. Metal against metal. An impatient jostle, a frustrated tap. Someone was at the back door. Slowly, carefully I approached. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't make a sound. I just leaned close enough to look through the tiny insurance glass panel near the frame. And I saw her. Emma. Standing on my back porch. With a crowbar. My entire body went cold. She wasn't knocking. She wasn't calling my name. She wasn't pretending to care. She was trying to break in. She looked furious, face tight, hair messy, coat half-zipped. She muttered to herself, pacing, gripping the crowbar like she had been rehearsing this moment. I felt my stomach twist violently. She had come early. She had come alone. She had come prepared. To do what exactly? Force me to sign papers? Drag me out of my own home? Make it look like I couldn't function? Or something worse? My breath grew shallow. She raised the crowbar again and jammed it under the door handle. Panic surged through me so suddenly that I almost stumbled backward. I moved quietly to the hallway table and grabbed my phone. Thank God it was there. My hand shook as I dialed 911. The operator answered immediately. 911, what's your emergency? My daughter is trying to break into my home. I whispered, voice trembling. Please send someone. What's your address, ma'am? I gave it. My breath shook violently. Is she still outside? Yes. Is she armed? Yes, she has a crowbar. Stay on the line with me. But I didn't stay. I couldn't. I put the phone in my pocket without hanging up because I needed both hands free. Needed to brace myself. Needed to think. Emma slammed the crowbar harder. The door rattled. She grunted in effort. She was trying to force her way in. My own daughter. A sound escaped me. A broken, strangled thing I tried to swallow back. But the noise made Emma suddenly pause. She froze. Turned her head. Her gaze snapped directly to the glass. Her eyes locked onto mine. And everything inside me collapsed. Her face shifted. Not into guilt. Not into remorse. But into something terrifyingly blank. Like she had expected me. Like she had prepared for this. Like this was simply the next step in her plan. She stepped closer to the glass, her breath fogging it. Mom, she said, voice muffled but unmistakably cold. Open the door. I didn't move. Mom. Her voice sharpened. Open the door right now. I backed away slowly. Her eyes followed every inch. Then she raised the crowbar again. Mom, she said, her voice dropping into something dead and hollow. Don't make me do this. I stumbled backward so fast I collided with the wall. She slammed the crowbar into the door with a deafening crack. Wood splintered. I screamed. The 911 operator's voice said something in my pocket. I couldn't even understand the words through my panic. Emma slammed the crowbar again. And again. The frame split. Pieces of wood snapped off. She was getting in. My daughter was breaking into my house. I ran. Not far, just to the nearby hallway, but enough to put distance between us. Enough to keep the door out of reach. Enough to buy time I desperately needed. Her voice tore through the house like a knife. Mom! Stop running from me. I covered my mouth to keep from sobbing. Another slam. Another crack. One more hit and the door would give. I could hear sirens faintly in the distance, too faint, too far, too slow. Mom! She screamed again. You're hurting yourself. Just let me help you. Help. 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 Her voice twisted the word until it no longer meant anything safe. Another slam. The door burst inward. Emma stumbled through it, breathing hard, hair sticking to her face from sweat. Her eyes were wild. Not with rage. With obsession. She spotted me instantly. There you are, she whispered. I stepped back. Stay away from me. She smiled. Slowly. Terrifyingly. Why are you afraid? I'm here to fix everything. Get out, I said, my voice barely a breath. I can't. She lifted the crowbar. Not until you stop fighting. My blood turned to ice. She took one step. Then another. The sirens grew louder outside, but she didn't seem to hear them. I'm doing this for us, she whispered. And that was the moment. The moment I knew, truly knew, that Emma wasn't just manipulative. She wasn't just greedy. She wasn't just cruel. She was dangerous. She was willing to harm me, maybe even kill me. And she believed she was justified. That was the instant everything changed. The instant the story broke open. The instant my fear transformed into survival. Because when she lunged, crowbar raised, I ran. Not just away from her, but toward the one place in the house where I knew I could buy a few seconds. The basement. I sprinted for the door, grabbed the knob, yanked it open. And in the blur of panic, I made my biggest mistake. I tripped on the top step. I fell. Hard. The world spun. My head cracked against something. Lights burst behind my eyelids. My ears rang. Above me, through the dizzy haze, I heard Emma's voice. Calm. Almost relieved. Mom, don't fight anymore. Then, a slam. A metal click. Darkness. She had locked me in. And as consciousness slipped away, I understood the truth with devastating clarity. This wasn't escalation anymore. This was the point of no return. When I woke in the basement, the first thing I felt was the cold. It crawled under my clothes, slipped beneath my skin, made my fingers stiff and clumsy. The second thing I felt was pain. Sharp in the back of my skull, dull across my hip, throbbing in both wrists. But it was the third thing I felt that truly woke me. Silence. A thick, suffocating silence. The last thing I remembered was Emma's voice echoing down the stairs, and the sound of the door slamming shut. For a moment I didn't move. I lay there on the hard concrete, staring into darkness so complete it felt alive. My thoughts were slow, thick, scattered. I couldn't tell how long I'd been unconscious, minutes? Hours? The basement had no windows, no clocks, nothing to anchor me in time. My breath fogged the cold air. I tasted dust. Metal. Dampness. Then slowly memory returned. Emma. Her crowbar. Her blank, determined eyes. Her whisper. Don't fight anymore. The fall. The impact. The darkness. The lock. Fear rose in me so fast it made my heart stutter. I forced myself upright. Every muscle protested. My head throbbed so intensely I had to steady myself with a hand on the wall. When my vision cleared enough to see vague shapes, I realized where I was. The far corner of the basement. Near the old furnace. Where Richard used to keep his tool chests. My mind snapped fully awake. I was trapped. And Emma had put me here on purpose. The cold air scraped my lungs. Emma. Called out weakly. Nothing. Not even footsteps. Not even breathing. I swallowed hard. The silence pressed in on me like weight. Emma. I said louder this time. Let me out. Still nothing. A tremor ran down my arms. She had left. She had left knowing I was unconscious on a concrete floor. She had left knowing the basement door locked from the outside. She had left me here too. I didn't finish the thought. Instead, I forced myself to breathe. Slow. Deep. Controlled. Panic would kill me faster than anything else. I pressed my palms against the floor to push myself up, but my left wrist screamed in pain. I winced and leaned on the other side instead. When I finally got to my feet, I swayed unsteadily. My head pulsed with each heartbeat. I touched the back of my skull and felt a large, tender swelling. Wetness. Maybe blood. Hard to tell in the dark. I needed light. I took a slow step forward, one hand tracing the rough concrete wall. I knew this basement well. I had lived in this house for decades. I knew the layout by heart. The shelves, the furnace, the rusty pipe in the center beam. I also knew there was a pull string for the overhead light somewhere near the bottom of the stairs. I just had to get there. My legs shook as I walked. My hip burned, but I ignored it. My breath echoed too loudly. I reached out blindly until my fingers brushed the wooden banister of the staircase. The light cord should have been just beside it. I felt around. Wood. Cobweb. Cold damp. Then. String. I pulled. A single bulb crackled to life above me, flickering before settling into a dim, sickly yellow glow. And for a moment, just a moment, I wished I had stayed in the dark. Because the light revealed exactly what Emma had done. The door at the top of the stairs was shut. A heavy deadbolt was latched. A chair had been wedged under the knob from the other side. And a thick metal bracket, one that hadn't been there in years, had been drilled into the frame. She had reinforced the lock. This wasn't an impulse. This wasn't a moment of panic. She had planned this. My mouth went dry. I clutched the railing to keep myself standing. I wasn't supposed to get out. That thought sank into me like teeth. I felt my heart hammer in my ribs, felt the first crack of real terror. I backed away from the stairs, unable to look at the door any longer. My ankle throbbed. My wrist screamed every time I flexed it. I needed to sit. I picked my way toward one of the old wooden crates near the wall and lowered myself carefully. My hands trembled violently. She put me here. She locked me in. She reinforced the door. She meant for me to stay. For how long? And worse, for what purpose? I rubbed my forehead with shaking fingers. My throat felt thick. Dry. I looked around for anything useful, water, food, anything. Nothing. Not even the dust-covered emergency kit Richard used to keep down here. My chest tightened painfully. Emma hadn't just locked me in the basement. She had removed anything that might help me survive. My heartbeat quickened. I whispered into the silent room. She wasn't trying to scare me. She was trying to get rid of me. As soon as I said the words aloud, the truth of them settled into my bones. Emma hadn't been escalating to manipulate me. She had been escalating to eliminate me. This basement, this place where she thought no one would find me, was her solution. Her final move. If she could lock me in long enough, I would weaken, dehydrate, collapse. And eventually, no, I would not think that. Not yet. I wiped my eyes with the back of my sleeve. I needed to stay alert. Stay rational. Stay alive. I stood, unsteady but determined, and began searching the basement methodically. Richard's old tool chests. The workbench. The shelves. The far corner with the boxes of winter decorations. No food. No water. No phone. No flashlight. Nothing. But then near the back wall, I noticed something strange. One of the storage shelves was slightly out of place, pushed forward by an inch or two. Behind it, a thin sliver of something shiny reflected the faint bulb overhead. I moved toward it. My instincts prickled, some mix of fear and hope, because I recognized the shape immediately. A phone. An old, dusty, outdated phone we hadn't used in years. My fingers trembled as I pulled the shelf aside and grabbed it. Dead. Of course it was dead. But in the chaos of the moment, I had forgotten something important. Old phones, by law, still dialed emergency numbers even when not connected to service. My breath quickened. If I could charge it just enough, I could call for help. But how? The basement had one outlet, near the furnace. But I didn't have a charger. Unless. I knelt near Richard's old tool chest, ignoring the pain radiating down my spine, and dug through the drawers. Dust puffed up in little clouds that made my eyes burn. I searched frantically, old cables, screws, batteries, a rusted hammer. Then, a cable. Thin, black, frayed on one end but perfectly shaped on the other. My hands shook as I plugged it into the extension outlet. No spark. No flicker. No smell of burning. It worked. I connected the phone. Nothing happened. Come on, I whispered desperately. Please, please. The phone stayed dark. I pressed the power button. Once. Twice. Held it down. The screen flickered. A faint battery symbol flashed. Then the screen went black again. I squeezed the phone to my chest, breath shaking. It was charging, slow but charging. I had a chance. A small one. A fragile one. But a chance. I needed time. 10 minutes. 15. Maybe 20. Time I wasn't sure I had. Because then I heard something above me. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. I froze. The basement bulb buzzed faintly overhead. Another step. Wood creaked. Someone was directly above the basement door. Emma. I moved closer to the stairs, keeping to the side where the angle would hide me from the crack under the door. I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. Her shadow shifted beneath the door. Then, 3 soft taps. Not knocks. Taps. Testing. Mom. Her voice floated down softly. Too softly. The kind of softness that hides a blade. Are you awake? I didn't answer. Mom, she repeated with a hint of warning now. I know you can hear me. Silence. I stayed still. The bulb hummed. Dust drifted lazily in its yellow glow. Emma exhaled loudly, an irritated sigh I knew all too well. You shouldn't have run from me. You made this harder. That word again. Always that word. Harder. For her. I held my breath, trying not to let the fear shake me. It didn't have to be like this, she whispered. If you just signed the papers, if you just trusted me, we could have avoided all this. Avoided all this. The words made my stomach turn. As though she were the victim. As though this were an inconvenience. As though I had forced her to trap me in my own basement. I felt anger rising again, sharp, hot, grounding. She continued, You know, it's really your fault. You pushed me. You never listen. You never let anyone help you. Her footsteps shifted. Metal clinked. She was checking the bracket. Testing its strength. Making sure I stayed put. My heart hammered in my chest. But I forced myself to remain silent. If she believed I was unconscious or weak, she might go away sooner. But then she said something that made every muscle in my body lock. You won't ruin this for me, she whispered. Not again. Ruin this how? Ruin what? Before I could process it, she continued in a breathy murmur. Mark's right. You're just in the way. The sentence sliced through me like a blade. I stepped back instinctively, my heel brushing the rough concrete. Her shadow stilled. Then she said something that made my blood freeze. You're going to be gone soon. And when you are, everything will finally be. Wham! She slammed her fist, or the crowbar, against the door with a violent crack that echoed through the basement. I gasped and stumbled back. She laughed softly. Soft laughs are worse than angry ones. So much worse. You heard me, didn't you? She said. I didn't answer. Mom, she said, voice unervingly calm. Don't pretend you don't understand. I know you've been snooping through things. I know you've been watching me. You shouldn't have done that. Another slam. You forced this. I clenched my fists. Below me, the old phone vibrated faintly, the battery symbol glowing weakly. I needed more time. Just a little more. But Emma wasn't leaving. Not yet. She leaned against the door. I could hear her breathing. Slow. Methodical. Like she was thinking. Planning. Adjusting. Then, maybe I should come back later, she murmured. After things settle. Settle. Settle how? I covered my mouth to keep from crying out. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, her footsteps retreated. The floorboards creaked as she walked away. I stayed perfectly still until I heard the front door open and close. Only when the silence returned did I dare move. I ran limping, dizzy, toward the phone. The screen was dim but alive. 2%. 2%. I grabbed it with shaking hands and dialed 911. The phone rang once. Then the call failed. No signal. Of course. Almost no service reached the basement. I tried again. Only one bar. Flickering in and out. I lifted the phone as high as I could. Near the staircase. Near the ceiling. Near the wall. Nothing. I moved around the basement, searching for even a sliver of connection. The signal jumped between 0 and 1 bar, mocking me. I stopped near the stairs and held my arm out as far as possible. The bar flickered to life. I hit 911. The phone connected. Barely. 911, what's your emergency? Oh, thank God. I'm trapped, my daughter. She locked me. Help. The call cut. Silence. No, I whispered, choking on the word. No, no, please. I dialed again. 0 bars. 1 bar. 0. My heart pounded violently. Sweat slicked my palms. I climbed onto the 4th stair step, the highest point I could safely reach without entering her line of sight if she returned. 1 bar. I hit dial. Ring. Ring. 911. Cut. I screamed in frustration, a raw, broken sound I didn't recognize as my own. My head spun. My breathing quickened. Panic clawed at my chest. I tried again. 0 bars. 0. 0. The phone beeped. Battery low. 1%. I wanted to throw it. Smash it. Cry. Collapse. But I didn't. I couldn't. I forced my trembling hands to plug it back in. Just a little longer. Just enough juice to try again. Just enough signal to reach someone. Anyone. Voices echoed faintly from upstairs. I froze. Footsteps. Not 1 pair. 2. Emma. And Mark. My breath seized. They were back. I grabbed the phone and hid behind the shelf, crouching as quietly as I could. My entire body trembled. Their voices drifted through the floorboards. You hit her too hard, Mark said. She fell, Emma snapped. It's not my fault. You need to calm down. I am calm. Silence followed. Thick. Heavy. Then Mark asked, Is she alive? Emma scoffed. Of course she is. She's stubborn. Maybe she broke something. Who cares? As long as she stays down there. My stomach flipped. Then Mark asked the question I'd been too terrified to think. How long until she's out of the picture? Emma exhaled. A day or 2. My heart stopped. A day or 2. She wasn't planning to rescue me. She wasn't planning to feed me. She wasn't planning to let me out. She was waiting. Waiting for time to finish what she started. Mark said something I couldn't make out. Emma replied sharply. Stop worrying. No one's coming. No one checks on her. My throat tightened. She does groceries alone. She barely sees anyone. She's isolated. It'll look like she slipped. Or wandered off. Or got confused and fell. People will believe it. Old people disappear all the time. Old people. Disappear. My breath hitched. Mark muttered something else. Emma snapped. I said stop worrying. Silence. Then. Let's go. We need to be back before the cruise leaves. The cruise. She was still going. After locking me in. After deciding to leave me here to die. She was still going. I choked on a sob. I barely kept silent. Their footsteps approached the front door. Then. I heard Emma pause. I heard her whisper something I couldn't make out. And then I heard the unmistakable sound of the basement lock being tested one last time. Click. Click. Heavy. Final. Certain. Then the front door shut. And the house fell silent. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Maybe 20. Until I was sure they were gone. Then I crawled toward the outlet and reached for the phone. It was at 3%. 3%. Enough. I climbed the stairs again, every step agony, and raised the phone until the signal flickered to life. 1 bar. 1 weak, fragile bar. I dialed 911. Ring. Ring. 911. What's your emergency? This time I didn't waste a second. My daughter locked me in my basement to die. I whispered urgently, trembling. Please. Please send someone. I don't know how long she'll be gone. I'm hurt. I think my head. Just hurry. Please hurry. The operator asked my location. I gave it. She asked if I could stay on the line. I'll try. Signal weak. Hurry. The call cut. But not before she said. Help is on the way. The phone beeped. Battery low. 1%. Then it died. I slumped against the wall, breath shaking in my chest. Help was coming. I didn't know if they would get here in time. I didn't know if Emma would come back before they arrived. I didn't know if she would realize I'd called. I didn't know if the police would break down the door or assume it was a false alarm. But for the first time since waking in the basement, I had hope. Weak. Flickering. Fragile. But alive. And so was I. I closed my eyes, held my bruised wrist to my chest, and whispered the words out loud because I needed to hear them. She thinks I'll die here. I opened my eyes. I won't. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that the most terrifying part was still coming. Because Emma did come back. And she didn't come back alone. I don't remember losing consciousness again, but at some point during the wait after the 911 call, the world simply slipped away from me. When I came to, the light bulb above me buzzed in and out, flickering like it was trying to stay alive. My breath fogged the air again. My limbs felt heavier than before, my mouth so dry it hurt to swallow. But what woke me wasn't the cold. It was the sound of voices. Not police. Not rescuers. Not strangers. Emma and Mark. They were back. I stayed completely still, lying on the concrete, listening as footsteps crossed above me. Their tones were tense, sharper, faster, like something had gone wrong. "Did you lock the door?" Mark hissed. "Yes, of course I did," Emma snapped. "I'm not stupid." "Then why did they call?" he whispered harshly. My blood ran cold. They knew. I had made the call. The police were coming. And Emma knew someone was on the way. My heartbeat thudded painfully. I forced myself into a sitting position, pulse pounding in my temples. "Maybe it was a neighbor," Emma said, but her voice trembled. "Or someone driving by." She screamed before I left. "I told you that. Someone could have heard her." "It was a wellness check, Mark snapped. "They don't send those unless someone requests one." Someone called. She didn't answer. Her silence was its own confession. Mark continued, voice low and panicked. "If the cops show up and find her down there." "They won't," Emma hissed. "We can fix this." Fix. That word again. Footsteps approached the basement door. I scrambled back instinctively, pressing myself into the shadows behind the furnace. My heart thudded so loudly I was sure they could hear it through the floor. Then, the deadbolt clicked. My breath seized. Emma spoke softly, but her tone chilled me. "If she's awake, this'll be easier. If she's not, even easier." Mark muttered something I couldn't hear. Metal scraped. Weight shifted. The chair blocking the door moved. I clamped a hand over my mouth. The basement door creaked open. Light spilled down the stairs. Emma's silhouette filled the doorway. Mark was behind her, silent, tense. My heart pounded so hard I thought my ribs might crack. Emma took one slow step down the stairs. "Mom," she called softly, almost sweetly. "Are you awake?" I didn't answer. I pressed myself farther into the shadows, ignoring the throbbing pain in my head and wrist. She took another step. And another. Her footsteps were careful, cautious, like she knew I wasn't unconscious anymore. "Mom," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Don't make this harder." That phrase again. Always that phrase. Mark hovered at the top of the stairs, muttering, "Hurry up. They'll be here any minute." Emma snapped. "Shut up." Her shadow stretched across the basement floor, long and warped under the weak bulb. She reached the bottom step, scanning the room. I stayed perfectly still. She took a step toward the shelves, my hiding place. My pulse hammered in my throat. Another step. Seconds felt like entire minutes. Then, a sound outside. A car door. Then another. Voices. Emma froze. Mark stiffened. They looked at each other, panic flashing between them. Then, a knock at the front door. "Police. Open up." Emma's face drained of color. Mark hissed. "What do we do?" Emma's breath came fast and shallow. "Hide. We need to hide her. Now." But she was too late. The knocking grew louder. "Police. Wellness check." Emma bolted up the stairs. Mark followed. The basement door slammed shut. I heard frantic whispers. Furniture scraping. Footsteps rushing. Then, a second harder knock. "Police. Open the door." Emma's voice, suddenly sweet, soft, composed. "1 second." I staggered to my feet, leaning heavily on the furnace. My knees wobbled. I felt dizzy, so dizzy I thought I might collapse again. But adrenaline surged through me. This was my moment. My only chance. Maybe the last one I would ever have. I grabbed the metal pipe attached to the furnace, loose at one end from age, and yanked. It snapped free with a metallic clang. I limped toward the stairs, gripping the pipe like a lifeline. My body screamed in pain, but I ignored every warning. Upstairs, I heard the front door open. A male voice. "Ma'am, we received a call." Emma cut in quickly, laughing gently. "Oh, that must have been a mistake. My mom isn't here. She went on a little trip with my brother. I hit the splintered basement door with the pipe. Hard. Emma's lie cut off mid-sentence. The officers fell silent. I hit it again. Harder. The door rattled loudly. Ma'am, an officer said slowly. What was that? It must have been the dryer. It shakes sometimes. I slammed the pipe again. Help! I screamed, forcing my battered lungs to push air out. Down here. I'm down here. Mark shouted something unintelligible. Chaos erupted. Footsteps. Shouting. Movement. An officer bellowed. Step aside. Now. Emma shrieked. Wait. The door shuddered. Wood cracked. A loud crash shook the frame. And then, a boot hit the door. It burst open so violently that the chair wedged under it snapped in half. Bright light poured down the stairs. Mrs. Brooks, a voice yelled. Are you down there? Are you injured? I raised the pipe weakly. Here, I managed. Please help. 2 officers rushed down, hands outstretched. I dropped the pipe. My knees buckled. One officer grabbed my arm. The other steadied my back. Oh my God. One whispered. She's freezing. Call EMS, the other shouted. I clung to their sleeves, my breath shaking. She locked me in, I whispered. My daughter locked me in. She tried to leave me here. One officer squeezed my shoulder gently. You're safe now, ma'am. We've got you. But over their shoulders I saw Emma on the staircase. Her face was drained of all color. Her mouth hung slightly open. Her eyes, wide, glassy, shocked, locked onto mine. For the first time she looked afraid. Truly afraid. Not of being caught. Not of getting in trouble. But of me. As if my survival ruined something she believed she already had. 2 officers blocked her path. Ma'am, one said firmly. We need to speak with you. Emma blinked, tears suddenly filling her eyes. I can explain. But Mark wasn't nearly as composed. He bolted. He ran down the hallway toward the back door. Stop! An officer yelled. Boots thundered across the floor. Crash. A thud. A shout. And then silence. One officer returned, panting. He's in custody. Emma collapsed onto the stairs, sobbing. But it was the performative, exaggerated sobbing I had seen my entire life. She wasn't crying from guilt. She was crying because she had lost. The officers turned back to me. We're getting you to a hospital, one said gently. I nodded weakly. But before they helped me up the stairs, I looked at Emma one last time. She covered her face with her hands, rocking back and forth. Not grieving. Not horrified. Just calculating. Even then. Even after everything. And somehow that frightened me more than the basement. Hours later at the hospital, after the tests, after the statements, after Henry arrived with panic etched into his features, I lay in a quiet room, wrapped in warm blankets and 4 in my arm. A nurse checked my vitals. A detective waited outside to ask more questions. Henry held my hand, his thumb brushing my skin gently. His eyes were red. Mom, he whispered, voice breaking. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Tears filled my eyes again. Exhaustion, grief, relief tangled all together. I didn't want to believe she could do this, I whispered. He nodded, swallowing hard. I'm sorry. I should have been here. I shook my head. You're here now. We sat in silence. Finally he asked quietly, do you want to know what's happening with her? My throat tightened. No. He nodded slowly. She's being charged, he said anyway. Multiple counts. They found evidence. Messages. Documents. Even equipment in her car. My eyes stung. He didn't say murder attempt. He didn't have to. He just squeezed my hand tighter. The important thing, he whispered, is you're alive. Alive. The word felt strange. Heavy. Precious. I closed my eyes. I could still hear the basement door slamming. Emma's whisper. You'll be gone soon. The crowbar. The darkness. But I also heard the officer's voice. You're safe now, ma'am. And Henry's. I'm here. I breathed slowly, the pain in my ribs easing slightly. Yes, I was alive. And Emma was gone from my life forever. But the story wasn't finished. Not entirely. Because the next morning, after the detectives returned, After Henry stepped out to get coffee, a nurse entered my room holding something in her hand. "Mrs. Brooks," she said, "this came for you." A phone. Delivered anonymously. My heart stopped. On the screen was a single message. From an unknown number. 4 words. "We're not done yet." My blood went cold. Mark was in jail. Emma was in custody. So who sent it? And how much did they know?